When discussing sectors or catch shares, many people fear that this will create a consolidated and privatized industry, similar to what happened with the agriculture business in the Midwest. While many argue that the fleet is already fairly privatized due to high permit and vessel costs, this upcoming change only further reduces the opportunity for new or younger fishermen to get into the business. Many in the industry are worried that this will further drastically reduce the fleet and eventually lead to a small number of boats owned by large corporations who will end up buying out those that can't afford to stay in business. Fishermen have begun to speak out through protests around the country and become more politically organized in an attempt to fight what they see as unfair regulations.
NIMS is concerned about the potential for consolidation within the fishery. That does not mean that all consolidation is bad. In fact, if you look in Amendment 16 under the sort of objectives and goals of sectors, one of the possible goals and objectives of sectors is that you can in fact use it as a way to allow more efficiency, some consolidation, and allow for a mechanism for those who want to exit the fishery. At the same time, nobody is looking forward to a fishery of 4 factory trawlers replacing a fleet of vessels of various shapes, sizes, and gear types.
You need to be clear about whether you're talking about short-term or long-term, and you also need to be very honest about what's happened, what the alternative is to this transition to catch shares or to sectors in New England. If the alternative is to continue the way we've been going since the mid-1990s with people exiting the fishery in large numbers, jobs decreasing, revenues decreasing dramatically, I mean over half, well over half of the fish stocks that we depend on here are either overfished, subject to overfishing, or both. So projecting that forward paints a very bleak picture.
And if you bring in catch shares and you consolidate ownership and you put most of the capacity to catch in a very few number of hands, then you're changing the profile of the industry. And if you change the profile of the industry and eliminate many of the businesses that are now working as fishing businesses, I think you'll also have a dramatic impact on the nature of the community itself.
As it consolidates the resource into a few hands. When the initial split comes down so that each permit holder gets his share of the pie, the allocation issue, it's the primary split that's either fair or it's not fair.
The people who have owned their permits through those years and have fished them have basically their own history. What they landed, they won't be able to catch that same amount, but they'll be able to catch a percentage of it. So in that respect, it's kind of fair. But I didn't own my permit for most of those years in that time frame they used, so my future is based on someone else's capability of catching fish, and unfortunately, my percentages are low.
One main concern with the New England groundfish sector program is that there is no accumulation cap on how much one sector can have in order to create a fair and balanced system. This has led to a concern that many in other sectors will not receive an allocation large enough to make a living. The fishing fleet in New England has been drastically reduced in the past 10 years, and many believe that things are only about to get worse.
The number of fishing jobs available are totally dependent on the number of fish available. So for a given natural resource, given for a certain amount of fish in the water, there's going to be a certain cap on the number of jobs. It's then a public policy decision to say, are you going to provide the maximum number of jobs that are at a low level? To what extent are fishermen allowed to try to get more than that low level and get wealthy?
An underlying cultural effect from this new system is the strain it puts on younger fishermen. Since the amount of allocation one receives is based on the catch history of the permit they hold, many younger fishermen are not given as large of an amount of allocation compared to someone older with more history. This puts a strain on their business and also serves to potentially push out the young guys of the fleet who cannot afford to stay in this industry as a full-time job, and will discourage new entries into the industry due to high costs and obtuse regulations.
I don't see any newcomers in the fishery from this point on. There certainly won't be a third-generation fisherman in my family. I don't see how someone is going to front the sort of money you need now to get into this fishery. To buy enough history to make a career out of it, you're looking at $250,000 to $500,000.
In terms of right now, purchasing a permit and a vessel is a pretty substantial move for anyone. You're looking at anywhere between $200,000 and maybe 180,000 to maybe about 800,000.
I don't feel that great about being in a sector. I'm all for sectors and what they stand for and the no discarding and all that. And they're great if you were allocated enough fish to make it worthwhile, because then you can come up with your own plan of attack, fish when you want to fish instead of when the season basically says you have to fish. But unfortunately, I wasn't allocated enough to be excited about it.
You know, the average age of the fleet is well over 50. There aren't many young people. That's also problematic because even if someone wanted to get involved in the fishing industry, even if they could secure a loan or grant and be able to buy their way into the industry, there aren't the skills and tools like that you know, that you have the older fishermen that are leaving the industry are the ones that have all the knowledge, and that's also going to be a serious problem moving forward for the fishing industry.
I'm essentially back to square one. I have a boat and I have a permit, but basically no allocation. So if I want to stay a fisherman, I've been doing a lot of legwork lately to find out how much it would cost me to buy enough allocation to stay, even catching half of what I normally bring in now. And I just don't know if it's affordable. I'm looking at probably $200,000 just to catch half of what I catch now.
I know of a number of younger fishermen that don't have great catch histories that would love to continue to be fishing. And we're going to do everything we can to keep those younger fishermen under 40 fishing.
There are very few young people that are going into this business. It used to be, when I started this in '72, I was a college graduate. And I went to work with my hands. My parents were very disappointed. But yet, I made real decent money. I was making better money than my dad was in the bank. And I liked the people I was with, and I liked the life. I liked the physical part of it. You had to rise and fall on your own merits. You couldn't just get 3 or 4 men to sign on board with you if you didn't know what you were doing. If you couldn't bring them the rewards, if you couldn't make them a living, well, you weren't going to succeed. And it was a great way to make a living. It was, Christ, it was as American as you could get. And now, people look at you and they say, you go fishing, and they scratch their head. You got to be crazy.
No one is truly sure what the future holds for the New England groundfish industry. Some remain optimistic that this will be a new age of fishing, while others will be forced out of a job before they even have a chance. Fishermen are entering a new era, full of unknowns, but they are working together in order to save their livelihood and community from disappearing forever.
Fishing is a way of life, as farming is. You're very close to nature, and you have a totally different schedule, a totally different lifestyle than people who work in normal jobs. And once you get into it, I wouldn't want to do it any other way.